Yeah. This is the Legacy League. Tell me what will your legacy be? Yeah.
The semifinals are set. 4 teams remain. I think 3 of them, 3 of the 4 top seeds we may have expected. And 1 team broke all of your brackets. And we'll get into how that happened. And that was actually the closest game from the quarterfinals in Rhode Island. We talked about how deep the league was all year. Well, here we go. We have a Final Four that's set. Let's kind of break down how we got to those 4 teams. And then we'll make them make some picks and who they have going to the finals now as of August 13th, August 14th, as of the semifinals. Kyler and Matt standing by. Let's start with that close game. Let's start with the, I guess, it is a surprise, but that's how it goes in the Legacy League sometimes. It is the Road Dogs taking down top-seeded, undefeated Lob City 80-76. We'll go to both of these guys, and we'll kind of quickly recap some of these games. But Rion Watts with 23 and 6 steals, Kareem Cooper with 21 and 7, Shaq Ardrey with 19, and Dell Butler with 11. So the Road Dogs getting some of that balanced scoring and able to kind of get some of their guys in rhythm. And for Lob City, only 4 players. They all scored over 10 points, led by Almar Sabit with 24 and 3, Nuri Mahmoud 23 and 10, and Kavai Simpson with 19. Kyler, I know you were watching, even though you weren't there. We're going to get to someone who wishes you were there and who was calling you out during his game later, which was hilarious. But as far as Lob City and the Road Dogs, Lob City did only start with 3 players. They only had 4 players, noticeably no Joe Secatore. But I asked the Road Dogs about it because, listen, when it's a rec league like this, that happens, right? It's not like LeBron James, who will always be there for the Lakers when they're in a game, right? That's his job. So people come and go, people get hurt, people have work, stuff happens, so you can only play who's in front of you. So as far as for the Road Dogs, this is not anything against them. They still had to battle, they still got the win, they advance, and that's how it crumbles, right? But from what you saw on the court, and kind of putting that point aside, Kyler, what did the Road Dogs do to battle and advance to the semifinals?
Yeah, the Road Dogs did what they haven't been doing all season, which is playing great, solid team ball. They had their 4 key players in the game that I believe are their 4 most name brand players that they have, with Rion Watts, Kareem Cooper, Shaq Ardrey, and Dell Butler, and they all scored 10 points or more. And we talk about how important it is to play good team ball, to have size. What could be the most important factor is always who's available to play. And if you look at Lob City, it's not the Lob City that played week 1. No Colin Burns, he's been out for a while. No Cody Crawford, no Joe Secatore. But take nothing away, great win for the Road Dogs.
And Matt, we'll get to you in a second. Good point on Cody Crawford, who's out with an injury as well, so kind of add that in. No one's making excuses. That's just the facts of why things transpired the way they did. But again, Matt, the Road Dogs, who was the key for them? I mean, we touched on those 4 players, but who stood out to you to help lead them to the win?
I really thought Rion Watts stood out again for the second week in a row, just his presence on defense. I know he had 7 steals last week, and he tacked up another. Let's take a look here. He had
6.
How many this week? 6
Yeah.
again, so that's 13 steals in 2 games. That's definitely letting himself known out there. He's also just making all-around great plays, getting his teammates involved, shooting the 3 well, a lot better than he has been lately. And he had a very exciting dunk in the game. He's just bringing that energy to his team to help them win. And just a great all-around game from them, I thought.
And he's been hitting threes, only 1 of 5 in this one, but I believe it was last week where he made 3 or 4. And so when you kind of add in everything else he's doing, when he's able to hit shots, he is the one with the ball a lot and is able to kind of get them going. And he has the ball a lot because of that defense. And he's able to take it away, and then there you go. He got the ball for his team, and he has the ball. So Road Dogs advance as the 8 seed. It's funny. I was thinking back, and God, they're going to kill me, and I forget exactly what year it was. I didn't do my homework, but the Duyes boys, when they made a run, they were an 8 seed. They took down a top-seeded Boom Shakalaka in our Rhode Island League, and they went on to win the finals. So not saying and not implying anything, but it's not the first time an 8 seed has kind of done this, taken down that 1 seed in the quarterfinals, all circumstances aside, then advanced. And that year, Lob City was on the other side of the bracket, whether a 2 or a 3 or a 4 seed, I can't remember, and Lob City ended up losing on the other side in the semis. So that team who did that as an 8 seed and won the title, didn't even play Lob City during that run. So that just kind of, it's one of those years, right? And let's kind of get to the other team that played on Monday night, as it was the Washed Up Boys off the bye, continuing to roll. The Washed Up Boys, and it's a sad day for the Halfway Crooks, but they take care of the Halfway Crooks 78-57, and take care of is the right terminology. It was, a onslaught from the beginning. They shot it very well, and I think kind of the fourth quarter skews some of these numbers both ways, positively for the Halfway Crooks and kind of negatively or decreases the percentages for the Washed Up Boys. A huge first quarter. The Crooks battled in a second quarter, and actually out of halftime, it was a 6-point game, and had it to 4 early in the third quarter. And, kind of momentum a little shift, because there wasn't much of a shift in a lot of this game. And then it was all Washed Up Boys in the third quarter. From that point on, 26-11 is kind of what the run felt like. And if we're doing the math properly, that was kind of the run in the rest of that third quarter, give or take. And then they kind of played even in the fourth quarter and kept that double-digit lead. Matt first, the Washed Up Boys. Whoever picked the Washed Up Boys, don't even acknowledge it, don't even say anything. But in this one, shout out to the Washed Up Boys. Their two key players, and their role players played well as well. I'll get to the stats in a second. But those two, Hendel Leroy and Leroy Brown, were balling. And if they keep that up, they're going to be a tough team to beat. But what'd you see, Matt?
I saw a lot of great things from them, especially the way they played in the third quarter. They really came into the half just ready to roll, and they just took it to you guys. No, not trying to be mean or anything, but they did take it to you. They played a great quarter of basketball, and their presence inside is something I felt was very big in this game. I think they had 28 rebounds total, which was I think you guys had 16 maybe. So that was definitely a big factor, and just the way they play team ball and their chemistry together, There's no big egos on that team. They all want to win, and they all know how to win with each other. So very impressed with their play.
Hendel Leroy, 22 and 10 rebounds, so doing it all, and 3 of 5 from 3. So important. Kevin Gonzalez actually had 20 points, so let's not forget him, who's been I don't want to say streaky because I'm not trying to be that guy, but it's like sometimes he has like 25. And you're like, oh, yeah, all right. Like, if he does this, like, that's a whole nother layer to this team. And then other times he almost takes more of a back seat. And so they're going to need him to continue being and doing these things we saw in the quarterfinals. Leroy Brown, 13 and 7 as well. And just some good shooting, good defensive pressure. And they talked about it a lot in that interview. Dom Langston with 22 and 7. Charles Correa, 14. And only 5 players for the Crooks, no Jeff Winchell. So kind of the story of the season for the Crooks. But Kyler, we're going to preview a Washed Up Boys Road Dogs semifinal. And they did play. I'm trusting the two teams there. I'll pull up that matchup in a second. But on this one, Kyler, from what you saw, what stood out?
Well, yeah, in this game, it seemed like whenever Halfway Crooks had the ball, you guys were analyzing, trying to find a way to the basket. And whenever they had the ball, they would just go and get it done. And the energy was a completely different level. You could hear from the sound of the live stream. You could tell by the speed of the players that, like, it was just two different styles of basketball. And with the way they were playing, it looked like if they played that game 10 times, they would have won it maybe 9. So while I'm 0 for 2 in these first 2 predictions, it was definitely the deserved victory for the newer team today.
Yeah, Washed Up Boys. And now they get a rematch from week 3, where they won by 2 over the Road Dogs. We'll preview that in a second, and we'll do some all-star stuff. Let's keep it moving to Tuesday night, and we'll just keep going in order. It was the Skyhawks who advanced as the 3 seed and took care of the Air Mambas. 78-58. The Skyhawks advanced. Noah James, 6 threes and 32 points. Omar Rahman, another impressive performance by him. I forget, it was a day from the All-Wave sitting next to me. He's like, I like him. like I like watching him. I like the way he plays. And so shout out to Omar, who's just been constant, and they're gonna be a very important part of this team because Noah's doing it consistently now. This is week, game 9 or 9 for them. They had a bye. He's been doing it consistently. So it's going to be for all of these teams, and we'll get into it, those role players showing up in these big games against these other talented teams. But he did it in this one, 21-7 for Omar, like I talked about. And for the Mambas, Nick Lemoyne, 13. They all tried to score, and really, the Skyhawks were hitting shots early. Every time, once they built that lead, the Skyhawks did, really slowly, even as the quarter-by-quarter points show you. They built it kind of slowly, but kept adding on. And every time the Air Mambas would get it to 12, they would get it down to 10 because they were down 20 in like the third quarter. And I hear him talking like, let's cut into it, like let's play faster. And the pace picked up. Every time the Air Mambas would get it to like 12 and get a couple buckets in a row, the Skyhawks would hit a 3. And it was maybe a corner 3 from one of their role guys. Noah would hit a step back 3. And it was always a 3-pointer where if they miss it in a long rebound, it could go the other way and be a 5-point swing. But they hit them. And they kept the Air Mambas at a distance. And that was very noticeable at many points in that second half. Kyler, a wider margin in this one, but the Skyhawks, impressive for sure.
Yeah, they didn't trail after a single quarter, so they won every single quarter of this game, and that just shows how dominant they were. I'm editing the top plays highlights, and there are a lot of them this week, so the energy was flowing. This is a team we've talked about with the most chemistry in the league, maybe, even though they're a new team, and they were playing like it this game. Maybe it was close at the end of the first, maybe in the second. I had no doubt in my mind at any point in this game that they were going to lose just based on how they were playing, the shots that they were hitting. They've consistently shot almost 50% from 3 the whole season long. And if that's something that they can keep up, they can scare teams. It worries me, though, because as always with 3-pointers, you could just have a rough night and then that'll be it for them.
Yeah, and we can kind of let's get to this other game, which was also a wide margin. We'll go to Matt on this one. Speaking of 3-pointers, and we'll have more time to talk about the Skyhawks and the Game Breakers, who we're getting to, but it is the Game Breakers with a lot of threes as they defeat the All Waves by 30. 107-77. Hachi Amini with 11 threes by himself, 41 points. Jose Mercado with 27. He made 5 threes. So did Gian Avedizian with 5 threes and 20 points. I might have said that twice. I apologize. He's hitting these threes, and Gian, as I teased earlier in the show, looks over and goes, "Where's Kyler?" Because of the criticism, which some weeks Gian had a poor shooting game, and he'll admit that. So he was obviously having fun with it. And I'm like, he's gone. He's back at school. And Gian just goes, of course he is. Of course he's not here to see this one. An impressive performance from the Game Breakers, nonetheless, as they take care of the Owl Waves. Terrence Gallo at 21 led the way. A strong last couple weeks for him. Michael Labonte, 19 and 5 threes. 6 of 22 from 3 as a team for the Owl Waves. Not enough, as the Game Breakers went 22 of 44. So Matt, besides them making all these threes and that really helping them build that lead, what from the Game Breakers impressed you in this one?
Yeah, so after the first quarter, it was definitely a very close game, thinking we might get an upset here because the All Waves were playing great defense, they were playing well, and then the Game Breakers just came out of the first quarter and just came in and found their game, found their rhythm, and were able to play great team ball and just totally dominate the game after that, in my opinion. They were making all their shots. It seemed they shot 50% from 3, and they were just attacking the rim, and it felt like they could get anything they wanted.
And that sets up. So let's give you the actual matchup. So it is the Road Dogs and Washed Up Boys, who will play second, I believe, on Monday night. And then kicking off our semifinals will be the 2-seeded Game Breakers and 3rd-seeded Skyhawks. These guys can think about their picks in a second. Let me break down some of the All-Star and award stuff really quick before we make some semifinal picks. We announced our summer 2024 All-Stars and 16 players, and so from 12 teams it's tough, and just like to break down kind of how that went. And so for our summer 2024 All-Stars, the analysts voted. And when the analysts voted for our 16 All-Stars, they did have to pick players from at least 10 teams, right? So we do put that limit on it, but it couldn't be one from every team because even from the list, it was kind of hard to narrow it down already. So there are some teams without All-Stars, and really a lot of players had good stats. right? And we talked about this kind of going through the voting and exactly how it went. And so I'll toss it to them quickly on some of the All-Star players, just some of who their favorites are that they voted for in a second. But really with that voting, when people have similar stats, it ends up coming down to winning and kind of the type of team they were on. And so obviously, Lob City may deserve 2 players over another team who only has 1, right? But the stats may be similar of that second player on Lob City compared to a first player who had the ball all the time for a different team. So not to get into specifics, but there were limits on, or restrictions on who they could vote for. But in the NBA, there's no restrictions, right? And it is just all stat-based, and it can be 5 players from the same team if they get all the votes. So let's go to Kyler and really just some of your favorite All-Stars. I know I put you guys on the spot, and if you don't have the list, it's okay. I'm sure you can semi-wing it. But what was the challenge during voting for this stuff?
Yeah, the challenge was that there's so many categories as well. So you want to give recognition to a lot of people. Like, for instance, with the Washed Up Boys, Hendel Leroy has averaged more points than Leroy Brown. But if you give a first team to Hendel Leroy and Rookie of the Year, you should somehow get Leroy Brown in there somehow. But you can't give one and one the other, because truly Hendel Leroy has had the better stats this year. So because of that, we've put him up higher, and then maybe Leroy Brown feels a little bit shortchanged. And then stuff like Ashton Alcock, he scored so many points this year, tons more than last year.
Yes, so he wasn't an All-Star. We didn't reveal the other awards yet, but he wasn't an All-Star, right? And so to that point.
Yeah, so players like that, it's a little bit tougher because we're just valuing wins so much.
Yeah. Matt, any thoughts on the All-Star stuff? And 3-point and dunk contest participants are out as well. They still have to RSVP that they can be there, so we kind of vote in. But for All-Star, dunk, and 3-point, there's no games played. There's no really stat limitations because in the NBA there isn't. It's just, talent and entertainment is even more than talent. Kind of who do you want to see in a game like that where the all first team, second team, defense, MVP, offensive player of the year, all that stuff will be out later, and that kind of you have to play in so many games, you have to have this kind of stats. So yeah, Matt, what are your thoughts on the All-Star stuff?
Looking at the rosters that we made, I think we did and picked a pretty good team. I think we got it all right. I know it's definitely tough considering certain guys play on each other's teams, and a lot of these teams are very depth reliant, so a lot of these guys are very equal players, so it's very hard to choose some guys from certain teams. But I think Noah James and a couple other guys like Jose Mercado were very exciting players. I'm glad we got on the All-Star team, especially Jose, because I think he missed the first 3 or 4 games of the season maybe, and then he came in and he's just been playing dominating basketball, and he hasn't lost a game since he's been here, so very excited with the All-Stars.
Yeah, and so the perfect example of that is someone like Jose, who might have been the third, it doesn't matter who got voted when, but might have been the third player thought of on the Game Breakers because he wasn't there as much throughout the season. Is he an All-Star versus someone else, right? That may be on a different team. That's the hard part. And so the list feels right. Of course, it has nothing to do with me. So, of course, I feel that way where other people may not. But I just like to touch on that really quick. I love it. Let's kind of preview. And yeah, more stuff will come out. Go to our Instagram to check out the rosters, and we'll keep posting those and promoting that. But All-Star Night is Tuesday, August 27th at the Oakland Beach Boys and Girls Club. Let's get to the semis. All right. Putting you guys on the spot. You can have a couple words, but we're going to keep it short. It is first, we'll go in order of time, the rematch from week 1 that we've talked about. The Skyhawks haven't lost since. The rematch from week 1 where it is the 2-seeded Game Breakers and 3rd-seeded Skyhawks. In that matchup, 93-59, it was the Game Breakers. That was the Skyhawks' first game in the league. So this is both matchups. It wouldn't surprise me either way. And so that makes for kind of some fun picking, and we'll get to kind of analyze next week exactly what happens when these 4 teams face off. But Hachi Amini had 33, Gian Avedijan 27, and David DePino with 24, really leading the way for the Game Breakers. And Noah James only had 7 points in that one in his first game. And so since then has really picked it up. And I expect to, perform more like he has weeks 2 through 9 rather than kind of a repeat performance of what we saw in week 1. But let's go Kyler first because Matt just talked. We'll keep rotating. Make your pick and why, and kind of what the key to the game is.
Yeah, I'm taking the Game Breakers here. I think the Game Breakers, for a team that I picked to win, talk a lot of smack, but they can have their tactic where they go first with the size, and then in a game like against the Always where that didn't work, they can settle on the threes, and if they hit them, they can still wipe the floor. We saw that very early in the season when there was no Jose, there was no Charles Alexander, and there was no Josh Lapina. We were able to see the flexibility that they had, and especially in the initial game against the Skyhawks, without those star tall players, they were able to rely on a second way of winning, and that's what's going to carry them through the playoffs, I still believe.
All right, Matt, who you got?
I'm going to go with the Skyhawks just because they were my original pick that I had, but I think it's going to be a great game no matter what. Both teams have a very, very good chance of going to the finals, but I just think the Skyhawks can have an edge just because of their team chemistry that they have and knowing their roles. And the Game Breakers are a very talented team and have 3 of the best players in the league. So in a tight game, you never know who's going to want to make that shot and who's going to want the ball, and I feel like that could be a factor in the way that they make their shots or miss their shots, but I think either way, it's going to be a fun game to watch, and I'm going to roll with the Skyhawks on this one.
All right, good, because I zoned out for a second. I was like, wait, who do you pick? All right, so we got 1 for each. 1 for the Game Breakers and 1 for the Skyhawks. Our second game will be Washed Up Boys, the 4 seed who advance, and get a rematch with the Road Dogs from week 3. So let me pull that game up really quick. In that one, again, a 2-point Washed Up Boys victory. It did go into overtime. So hopefully we get that again. That's what we'd like to see. Only single overtime, so that's good. And Hendel Roll had 31 in that one. Leroy Brown, 17 and 13. Again, going back to week 3. Really, 8 made threes for the Washed Up Boys and only 5 for the Road Dogs in that one, where Del Butler led the way, 15 and 3. Rion Watts had 14 points, 15 rebounds, and 3 assists. And Mark Washington played in that one, who hasn't been available for the Road Dogs. So a different look. I actually remember that now. That Mark Washington had a shot, right, to tie it and force double overtime. Okay, so that it's coming back to me, the overtime game. So a very, very close game. Matt, who do you have advancing to the finals from these two, Road Dogs and Washed Up Boys?
I'm going to go with the underdog here. I'm going to take the Road Dogs just because, they've been coming in with that underdog attitude and wanting to prove the doubters wrong. And I've kind of hopped on board with it, I think. I love the way they played, especially last week. They made their clutch free throws when they needed to. They played great defense, and they just made the right plays. And when they played earlier this season, it was a very close game in overtime, like you said, and I just think the Road Dogs are going to come in with that underdog attitude and take it to them.
There is something, and it's funny, in the other matchup, not so much, because both teams have been just near the top and have been at a high level all season. The Road Dogs have been in a lot of close games, so not to slight them, but they've been in these games and at times haven't been able to pull it out, right? Let's get one last dig in there. The halfway Crooks game, the overtime game against the Washed Up Boys. They've been in a lot of close games. I'm sure there's more. We don't have to list them all off, right? Air Mamba's game that they did win, right? And so kind of pulling this together for the Road Dogs, all of the things that they've seemed to work through those struggles, which is so funny. Like now they closed out Lob City. They made their free throws. Like you said, it's a great point. And it's almost like they're feeding on that energy of no pressure. And there's pressure on everyone, but not as much pressure because they weren't even, they're playing with house money, right? All of those cliches that we hear, they can put the pressure on the other team because the other team is expected to win, quote unquote. And so they are in it. They believe they can win, but it's almost like they've been able most recently to turn the tide. Even on All Talk Sports, those two teams were even. So you kind of put the pressure on the other team of we're going to go on a little run, get a lead, and shift the pressure. So Kyler, are they going to be able to do that again this week against the Washed Up Boys?
I don't think so. Well, the teams play very similar style of basketball, and I think that the Washed Up Boys just play a cleaner style. It'll be fun to watch the gritty Road Dogs play against this smooth three-point shooting, but also big and strong Washed Up Boys team. I think it'll be a very close game. I think Kareem Cooper will be huge for them. defensively and offensively, scoring in the paint and defending out wide. So I would see this game being very close, but I think the edge goes to the cleaner, smoother team, and that's Washed Up Boys.
Possibly for the first time ever, I think like you guys have completely different finals, right? So that says a lot to kind of what we're expecting. It's so funny. The word smooth is a good one. I think both of those teams in the Washed Up Boys and Road Dogs are gritty and defensive, minded and get after it. And so it could be a very entertaining game, but it may also be a 50-45 game in a good way, right? Where there's blocks at the rim, steals, turnovers, like all of those things. That of the two games, I expect that game to extremely slow down in the fourth quarter and be a real grinded out game, which is all entertaining. Similarly, as the Skyhawks and Game Breakers might be more fast paced and threes, much more threes, and relying on that to kind of go back and forth in that game. Two matchups to watch really quick, and then you guys can, if you have any parting words, I don't know, and we'll get out of here. But I like the Kareem Cooper pick. We talked a lot about Rion Watts, but Kareem Cooper, who he's going to guard and who's guarding Leroy Brown in that matchup, they're similar players because both can handle, both from outside. You expect Rion to probably be on handle a roll, so that's that matchup. But then the secondary and tertiary matchups, that's your word of the day, guys, tertiary. Go look it up. I can't spell it, don't ask me. But those matchups are going to be huge in all of these games, right? How do those other players battle in those matchups? And then, who's going to be guarding Noah on that end and Omar and kind of, Game Breakers, we talked about their size. But then when we flip it, where do some of maybe the smaller players on the Skyhawks, and I've said it throughout the season, so I'll reiterate it quickly. They have size. The Skyhawks do a really good job protecting the rim and rebounding for the type of team they have. They need to make sure the pace is up, and does that then play into what the Game Breakers want to do? Because the Game Breakers, just by looking at both of the teams, have some of the bigger players. Doesn't mean they're going to get every rebound. Doesn't mean they're going to block every shot. The Skyhawks have a ton of players that can block shots and protect the rim. Zeki Burgess, shout out, and Omar Rahman was huge this week against the Air Mambas doing just that. But the last point, and I may even have forgot to say it in that Game Breakers matchup, watching it quickly, it was noticeable, and I said it to Mario and Aunt Ramsey and Ashton, who were all sitting next to me. The court was tilted in that one, where the All-Waves had to work so much harder to get a shot, and the Game Breakers would come down and drive the rim and kick it for a three, or get an open three, and it was just noticeable how much easier it was for one team to score versus the other. I expect all of these matchups to be closer, but that's something to watch, is who's able to make the other team work more and use more energy where in a battle, and then who adjusts. So that's my rant and my breakdown. I'm not making picks. He ain't putting me on the spot. Anything else for you guys? It's going to be two very good matchups on Monday, August 19th. Good? All right, they made their picks. Kyler has Washed Up Boys, Game Breakers, because he can't, now is not the time to, go against Gian, right? Too late for that. And Matt has Road Dogs and Skyhawks. Imagine that. Road Dogs, Skyhawks. After all the picks and all the predictions we did, two of those four teams will be left standing. Guys, good job. Good analysis. We're out right on time. I love it. Stay tuned for the semis. The finals will be the following Monday, which will put us at August 26th. And like I talked about, All-Star Night, August 27th from 7 to 9 o'clock. All in Oakland Beach at the Boys and Girls Club. Good job. 2 more post-game shows, actually. Yeah, 2 more. 2 more. Only 2 more. Got to get them while you can until the winter. But guys, good job. And everybody, thanks for watching.